What's up, YouTube, and welcome back to the Acura Audio Garage. This is video number 2 of the DIY Pro series. If you didn't see video number 1, that was the overview of the sound system on the Acura TL. In this video, we're going to be replacing the head unit. So we're going to be swapping the factory head unit for this Bose unit right here. But I just wanted to show you all your other options. I'm going to cover the accessories needed, the disassembly, and how to get your installation just right. Going to try to get into as much detail as possible about the installation and the steps needed to complete it. The DIY Pro series videos are to bring you as much information as in littlest time as possible. So I'm going to try to answer some questions that I know you're probably going to have. Can you install any double DIN? Yes. Can you install a double DIN even if you have navigation? Yes. Can you install a single DIN? Yes. You'll have the screen and then a pocket below it to fit that double DIN space. You can keep your factory subwoofer working. You can keep your factory navigation working. All your speakers work. They're 4-ohm speakers, so they'll all work with the new radio. You don't have to change your speakers. A piece of the DIY Pro Series videos is the crowdsourcing and crowdfunding of information. So we're trying to make the comments a conversation place where you can come in, ask your questions, get answers from us or other members, and kind of discuss some of the things you might want to see in future videos, and also a place where you can contribute to our YouTube channel. So if you join our YouTube channel, we have a couple different levels of membership, and that allows us to fund these projects and also invest in vehicles to move the series forward. So the DIY Pro series starts with the 2nd generation Acura TL, and we're going to continue on to other Acuras, but that's going to be up to our audience to see which car is requested the most. To complete this installation, you're going to need obviously a double DIN radio. We're choosing this Bose unit here because it's cost effective and easy to install, but everyone loves Pioneer. You can install Pioneer or Sony double DIN, Alpine, really any radio brand. You're not really limited here because the installation of this vehicle is rather simple. You do have a factory amplifier, but that's only used to power the factory sub. So as long as you get yourself an RCA, you should be fine. Now I'm going to walk you through the accessories that we offer, and then the accessories that you can buy anywhere. So if you were to buy a kit from us, it would include the dash kit. This is the part number for the dash kit. It's a 957868B. It's for the CL and the TL. And then you're going to want to pick up 2 of these 7D1721s, and that's so that you can transfer pins from one to the other, so you can keep your steering wheel controls working. And then you're going to need an RCA to wire tap into the factory wiring so that you can get your factory sub working. If you don't want to do any wire tapping, you don't want to do any wiring at all, then you can take a look at our product. It's just a plug and play harness. So this is wired to a Pioneer connector, but it's specific to any radio you select. And then it comes with the plug already wired with the steering wheel control input and the steering wheel control interface. So if you're using the access piece, all you have to do is just plug it right in. Here's the connector for it. This plugs into the back of your radio, and then so you don't have to wire tap any of the factory connections. This is the connector that will allow you to keep your factory subwoofer working. So if you're looking for this stuff, you can find it on our website. If you are already in the middle of installation and you need to finish with what you have, then remember you're going to need 2 of these, and then a sub RCA. An RCA that's rather long, so you can keep your factory subwoofer working. And then obviously you're going to need your dash kit. Those are all the components that we're going to need to actually install the radio, and here are the tools we're going to need. So you're going to need a Phillips screwdriver, a trim removal tool, an 8mm, and an extension. And I also recommend some kind of magnet pickup tool so that you have stuff to pick up any of the something to pick up any of the clips that fall. And then that's really it. This is everything we'll need to complete the installation. The other thing you're going to need is, there's going to be one more thing you need to complete this install, and that is patience. This installation isn't complex, but it is long. So there are a lot of steps, a lot of disassembly, and if you're trying to rush through this, it's going to be very frustrating. So I recommend setting aside a period of 3 to 4 hours to complete this installation. I don't think it's going to take that long, but at least with that time period, you have a cushion if something goes wrong, if you need an extra part, or if your part is bad, to complete this installation. Also, before you start, make sure you know where your radio codes are or how to get your radio codes. So once you pull the radio, you can get the serial number off of the radio, and you can go to radio code. Just Google Honda radio code on Google, and you'll come up to the link where you're going to put in your VIN, the serial number of the radio, some other pieces of information, and it'll shoot you back the radio code. Because the last thing you want is for you to go to install something, it ends up not working out, you put your factory radio back in, and now it doesn't work because you don't have those codes. Pulling the battery for installation is recommended, but not a necessity. We're not going to be taking any panels apart that are going to trigger any lights, but it's just a safety thing. I recommend disconnecting the battery so you're not shooting any current as you're connecting things and stuff, because you can blow a fuse. It does happen, so disconnecting your battery is recommended. Alright guys, so to disconnect the battery, it's just a 10mm, and all you're going to do is just loosen this up. Then you'll twist this back and forth. It should come right off. And then you're either going to want to tape this or stick it somewhere where you know it's not going to make contact with this terminal, because if it does, it's going to spark and it's going to shoot current through the car. So just make sure you either tape this up or put it off to the side. Alright guys, so to start the disassembly process, we're going to have to remove 2 screws that are showing, and then we're going to have to remove these 2 panels. So the 2 screws that are showing are going to be in the glove box right down there. You see both of them. And then the 2 panels we have to remove is this wooden panel here and this wooden panel here. So you don't lose these screws. I recommend just leaving them in there. They're not going to get in your way. This way they're in the location they need to be, and you're not going to confuse them with other screws. Get these panels off. We're going to start with this one. You're going to want to bring this up, and then you're going to stick your pry tool right in there, and you'll see it really makes it easy and simple once you get your pry tool in there for this to come off. The clips you're removing, and they're just sliding out of the slots. For the other side, you're going to do the same thing. You're just going to pop this corner like this, and then you can use your hands to pop the rest off. Just a quick notice to you, there's going to be screws in certain locations that I don't have screws. So this vehicle has been taken apart before, and I can already see that their screws are missing from when they should be. And one of those spots is right here and right here. So normally those screws help secure this onto this panel. Because they are missing, you saw I was able to slide that back, but I'm still going to continue with taking the screws off that we need to. So in total, you're going to take off this screw, the screw on the matching opposing side, then these 2, and then these 2 here, then these 2. Then we have screws here on the sides, one here, one up here, and on the opposite side, you can't see them on camera, but they're there also. So you have one here and one down here. So there are a lot of screws. You want to keep the right screws in the right place. So you might want to use some kind of separator or just rewind the video so you can see where they were. But I'm going to start by taking all the screws out. I know kind of where they go, so I'm going to put them in this metal tin. But I recommend you put them in some kind of separated storage, or if not, just keep track. Go back in the video to see where they were when you took them out. Alright guys, so like I said, there would be a screw here, so you're going to take this screw out. I don't have it, so I'm moving on to my next screw. Doing the opposite screw on the far side. And then again, the other screw that would be here, I don't have. So right now, you should have removed 4 screws. I know on video there's only 2, but again, you would have 4 screws, and then the 2 screws that are still here that we left there. After you remove those 6 screws all together, you should be able to lift this up from the back. You should be able to lift this from the back here like so. Stick your hand in and then pull. Now you should be able to, by putting your hand back there, pull this back. And it doesn't need to go all the way out. Just that is enough for you to continue with the disassembly. Alright guys, so now that we're at this step, this has been scooted back. We took these 2 panels off. Now we want to remove this panel and the opposite panel on the other side. So to remove this panel is actually secured by 2 screws here. I'm missing one, but there would be one up here. There's one here, and then it has 2 clips. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen this screw. Then you would have another screw up here that I'm missing. That screw would come out. And then you're going to stick your pry tool in this wedge. As you can see, this has definitely been taken apart before. There's no metal clip here. Yours will have a metal clip which will pose some resistance, but you're going to go ahead and pull it out with your panel tool, and then this panel you'll be able to pull towards you like so. So once you pull it towards you, the panel is free, and now we can continue to the next step. And here are the clips that you're pulling out. So if you hear metal fall, or if you have your metal pickup tool, it's not a bad idea to go around and see if you can pick up any of the clips. This is the clip that I was talking about that would have to be released, but it is missing. But there is a clip down here that helps hold it, and this is the spot where the screw goes onto. So again, this one on this side is pretty simple to remove. It's just undoing those screws and pulling it out. The one on the opposite side is a little tougher. All right guys, on this side it's a little bit more involved. So you're gonna have to pull this panel, and mine came off pretty easy, but this panel can be rather tough to remove. You don't need to fully remove it. You just need to get to the screw that's under here, and I'll show it to you right now. So Phillips screwdriver right where my finger is, and loosen that screw. That's gonna allow this panel to come off. So I'm gonna do that, and then I'll show you how it comes out. All right guys, so we got that one screw out. This is what it looks like. Now we just need to get our other two screws out. One is right here in this location where my finger is. And then the other one would be up here, but again, mine is missing screws. This was taken apart before. The last step is releasing this clip. So you're just gonna put pressure against it. It should release like that, and now you'll be able to pull this part. Be able to release this part and pull it towards you. So here was that screw point we were talking about, and that clip, this panel here clips onto this panel, and that's why you need to remove this screw. So now with both of these panels loose, we can move to the next step. All right guys, so the next part is the hardest part of removing this radio, and that's going to be removing the switches for your heated seats. To remove these switches, you're going to want to pry right at this seam, and that's going to allow you to pop this all the way up. Once it's up like so, you're going to wiggle it so it comes to about this height. At this height, I'll show you what you're looking for. So this tab right here is what you're going to press down on both switches, and it's going to allow them to come up through the top. So as you push this tab down, right there, as you push that tab down, you're going to then be able to force the switch through the top. So it should allow you to force the switch through the top like so. Once the switch is up through the top, you can pull it all the way out and disconnect it. So now it's all the way out. Now we can disconnect it. This is the hardest part of removing the radio, and it's so silly that the design was this way, but it is what it is. So to deal with this, you might want to get some lubricant or something to help you, because these are going to have a ton of grime around them from all the years of stuff being here and just it piling up, and it's going to make them real hard to get out. But this is the tab that's holding them in. You're going to push this down and you can get them out of the top, and then disconnect them, and after this everything's pretty smooth. You're going to get the other one out the same way. You're going to push this tab in, and then you should be able to disconnect it. Alright guys, now that we released both switches, we're going to get this plastic trim piece out. And to do that, we're actually going to remove this bezel from the shifter. So hopefully your bezel still has this cover, but just remember that location, because that's where we're going to stick our screwdriver in, so we can hit the neutral safety switch and bring our shifter down. So now that our shifter's down, we can pull this cover out of the way. You might want to take some time and clean this so that those buttons don't get stuck again the way they did coming out the first time. Our next step is to remove more screws. So we have these two here, and then there are 2 screws down there on the opposite sides of the OBD2 port. So you have one in this corner where my screwdriver is, and then you have one in the opposite corner of where the screwdriver is now. These screws are tricky to actually bring out without dropping them, so you want to be extremely careful to use either a magnetic screwdriver or a magnetic pickup tool so that you don't lose them in this. So here's what they look like. I just pulled one. I'm going to grab my other one now. Here's what the other looks like. So we're going to put those away, and then we're going to undo this screw, and then we're going to undo, I just lost that screw. And then we're going to undo this screw, then the one up here, I'm going to put our 4 screws away. So now, like I was saying, to get this panel off, you're just going to pull it towards you, and then you're going to turn it, because there's a connector here you have to disconnect. You're just going to hit the tab up top, and it should allow it to come free. And now you can put this piece aside. You might want to clean this piece up. I'm sure it's been some time before it's been out of the car or before you had it all apart like this. So I recommend just cleaning it up. It's going to look 100 times better once you do. We're almost done with the disassembly. We just got a couple more screws, and then we can pull the radio out. The screws on the side that are going to release the radio are here and up here. As you can see, this radio has been out before, so one of mine is missing. But here's one, and I'm just going to take the other ones out on the opposite side. Alright guys, so I removed the 2 screws here, the 2 screws on the other side, and now I can pull the radio. The radio uses these 2 clips on the face to help set it in place. So you're going to want to push those out. You can either do like I did with your fingers and push them out, or you can use a trim removal tool and stick it underneath here and pull it out. But once those are free, that was everything holding the radio. See, the radio has come forward, and now I can disconnect my connectors. So our connectors back here are a primary blue one for power, then you have your secondary for the Bose EQ. They just have tabs at the top, and then your antenna. So those are the 3 connections, and now our radio is out. If you plan on keeping your factory subwoofer working, this is going to be the step you need to remove the Bose EQ. So if you're not going to worry about your factory sub, you don't need to do the next part, but if you want to keep it, and I'm sure you do, you're going to need to remove the Bose EQ so you can get access to the connector. And to do that, you're going to need to remove 4 more screws. So first is this screw right here. Next is this screw right here. Then you have this screw here and the matching screw on the opposite side. Those 2 screws, one on this side right here, there, and then the other one on the opposite side. What that allows you to do now is to unclip this, bring this down, and here's the connector that we need access to so that we can keep the factory sub. So once that connector is out, we can actually put all this back in. So we're actually going to need everything that is here to mount our new radio. So you just need to bring this connection down, and you're just going to secure this back in place to where it was. Alright guys, so once you remove the Bose EQ, we drop it down, you put these brackets right back. They're going to snap in these holes on the side, and then these nipples are what hold it in place. And then here's the connector that you need access to. We'll go over the wiring later in the video. Right now we need to put the screws that we took off back on. And they go right back here. Just screw them in on each side. Now that we got the radio out if you have navigation and you want to keep your factory sub, you're gonna need to remove the 2 screws up here, the ones here and ones here. Then you're gonna want to pull the panel forward. What that's gonna allow you to do by pulling this forward is to get access to remove the screws for the navigation screen, because when we pull the Bose EQ, the navigation screen also mounts to this mount, so you won't be able to loosen it. There is a way, if you have really skinny fingers, to disconnect this plug without pulling the actual brackets down, but it's very complicated and very annoying. So I recommend just pulling the bracket down, and if you have navigation, taking the extra step to remove this screw, prying this panel off, and then you'll remove the navigation screen as well, so you can drop the Bose EQ and then put everything back so you have this connector exposed like we do. Alright, so now that we got the radio out, it's time to assemble our dash kit and get our wiring ready. So again, the reason why we picked the Bose radio is because we don't have to run a microphone. So any other name brand radio, you're gonna have to run a microphone, and this is so you can have better Bluetooth audio for calls. So when you're speaking, they can hear you clearly with a microphone like this. The Bose Elite product does a good job of having an internal mic built in, and it works just as good as this for audio calling. And the other thing is, you don't have to run a USB extension or cable anywhere. So the Acura does give you a good place to replace your cigarette lighter, to put a USB port. So something like this will go here, and then you can run the cabling up to the radio. But because this Bose Elite radio has a USB port right on the face, we don't need to do that either. So it really simplifies our installation by using this Bose Elite radio. We get to remove these additional steps that might be or may not be necessary for the installation you're doing. So the first thing we're going to put together is we're going to open our dash kit, transfer some parts from the old radio to the new dash kit, and then unbox our radio and mount it. Alright guys, so the dash kit is pretty simple. The instructions give you an idea of how to remove the factory radio, but we went over that already. So now we just have to go about assembling the kit. So the first step you can see is we're going to mount the ears, then we're going to slide our radio in, and lastly we're going to mount this top pocket from the factory radio onto the dash kit. Alright guys, so we got the Bose radio out, and this is just for a demonstration so you can see about dash kits. So this model right here, 7018B, this is the eBay special. This radio is probably 50 bucks, 60 bucks. And believe it or not, you could actually use it for the TL. The reason these radios don't normally work is because they're so thick, they don't fit in dash kits. So with this trim bezel, the radio wouldn't fit, but because this is removable, I could actually get this radio to fit decently. You see some gaps, but it's not the end of the world. You could live with this. If you wanted a fit and a better look, any name brand double din radio is going to fit in the bezel and allow you to put this bezel on top of it, so you can see it really looks flush, it really fits really well. So you can use these cheap eBay Chinese radios for this installation, but if you go with something name brand, even the Bose unit, as you can see, it just fits a lot better in the dash kit. Got our dash kit fitted onto our radio. Now we're just going to mount it. So you see that looks nice and clean. We're just going to grab our screws and put them in the holes. Okay. Alright guys, so 3 screws on each side is fine. These are the locations we ended up with. You always want to hand tighten these so that you don't mess up the threads of the hole. So once that's in, I'll do our other 3. Okay. So nice. So our radio is in our dash kit. It's mounted on there. Now we need to transfer some parts from our old radio to the new. Alright guys, so you need to pull these off. Just like so. And then we need to unscrew this storage pocket. Then you're going to pull the pocket forward and it should release from its location, and now you can store your old radio away. You're not going to need it. Alright guys, so the little clips, you're just gonna insert them. You're just gonna insert them till they sit all the way flush. Be careful though, the plastic here is not as forgiving as the plastic on the factory radio. It's a little flimsier, so you want to be careful. You don't want to use too much force. Alright guys, so this has 3 little nipples that you want to line up with these 3 holes, and then these go over. So I'm going to try to show you on video how this goes. So first things first is you want to line up those 3 locations. So now that they're in, these should then end up going over. So the cover, this cover goes outside, and you can see the same thing on the other side. Now we're going to take the screws that came with the dash kit. And guys, we're going to take the 2 screws that came with our dash kit, and we're going to put one in here and one in here. So here is our dash kit all put together with the parts we needed from the factory one. Now I'm going to work on the wiring harnesses for the radio. The radio also came with a trim bezel for the radio. We don't use it. We use the one that came with the dash kit. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a plug and play harness. I'll show you the process. This is the only part that we will cover in the car. There is no plug and play for this. You're going to have to wire tap some wires if you want to keep your factory sub. Or again, we sell the connector. You can buy it on our store, AcuraAudioGarage.com. But to get the party started, we're going to need to open these. So we're going to unpin one of these so we can use the wire in the other one. So we're going to grab this wire right here is the front right positive, and that is 1 2 3 4 from the in. 1 2 3 4. Stick your pin removal tool in there, and you lift up. And that releases the pin. Now we're going to shove this pin where it needs to go, and that's going to be right here. This is the steering wheel control input for any Honda Acura. So as you can see, our plug and play harness already has that wire added, but we just added it. That's why you need to. If you don't want to keep your steering wheel controls, or you're going to wire tap your steering wheel controls, then you're not going to need to get 2 of them. But I recommend doing it this way. It's the easiest, cleanest, and cleanest way to do this, so you don't have to wire tap any factory wiring. So now that we got our wire we needed, we're going to toss this away. Now we're going to prep our steering wheel control harness. So this harness comes with the ASWC1. This harness is also there. You won't need this unless you have a Kenwood or a JVC. In our case, we're using the Bose, so we're not going to need this. We're going to throw this back in the box. The reason why we chose the access piece is because this will self-program itself. We don't have to do any programming when we want to get our steering wheel controls working. We're going to prep our wiring harnesses. The first one we're going to prep is the one for the ASWC1. And what I mean by prep is I'm just going to remove all the wires I'm not going to use. So for this Acura, we're going to use this gray blue. That's the resistive wire used. This is 12 volts, switch power, and this is ground. This is the output to the radio. So all you're going to do to remove these is you want to grab it firmly and just pull them out. You can cut them, you can leave them in, it's up to you. This just makes our wiring easier and cleaner. Then I'm going to take a look at the harnesses that came with my radio. So this pigtail has the parking brake, it has the remote output, the reverse input, so if I want to do a backup camera, and then it has power for my camera. So we're going to end up using this. And then these are your traditional harnesses. Here is my ground, my switch 12 volts, constant power, illumination, antenna turn on, and then of course all our speaker wire. So this is going to be very simple. These next few steps, we're going to color match this harness to this harness. So all these are going to get to all of these, and you're just going to color match gray to grays, greens to greens, whites to whites, purple to purples. This blue is going to get connected to the remote output, because for this installation, this wire is what turns the factory Bose amp on and off. So we want to feed it from the remote output of the radio. We're not going to use the power antenna, and then all of these we're going to color match but we're going to have to bring these into play as well. And then the pin that we added, that gray pin, is going to hook up to this gray blue. So I know I mentioned a lot of information. I'm going to get the wiring done, and then I'll show you every piece again connected so you can get a better understanding of how they're supposed to go. For wiring, I recommend picking up a set of these, I'm not even sure what they're called, like quick solder connects. Basically, how they work is you take two wires, you slide this over them, you then twist the wires together so that they form a straight line, and you slide this back over the wiring. Then you apply heat with a lighter. This solder will melt, making a solid connection between the wires, and this heat shrink will shrink, making it airtight and watertight, so you have a nice solid connection. So for this connector, you're just color matching. You're doing your pair of whites, your pair of greens, your pair of purples, and your pair of grays. For this connector, you're going to connect your parking brake to ground because it just needs to be grounded on the Bose radios. And then our amp turn on goes to this blue wire. Our ASWC1 has 3 wires. So that gray wire we added goes to gray blue, red goes to red, and black goes to black. So you can see we have 2 blacks here, and then the black and the parking brake from this connector, reds to reds, blue to blues, and then this gets connected by itself. So now what we're going to do is we're going to just tape it up and add some zip ties to make it look pretty. These additional wires you don't need to connect, and that's going to be your antenna turn on. So if you are running an amplifier, this is the wire you're going to tap, the remote turn on. This blue white wire is to turn your amp on and off. If you're doing a backup camera, this is the wire, the reverse input, that needs to see 12 volts positive. So this needs to get connected to the backup light to tell the radio to auto switch to reverse. And then these are powers, 12 volts, 500 milliamps to your camera. So if you want to do a front and a rear camera and they're low power under 500 milliamps, this is lines you can use to run from the back of the radio to the cameras. But those are all our connections. We're going to get everything hooked up in the car and show you the next steps. So this is what is included in your complete kit. You're going to get a dash kit to mount your radio onto, a completed harness where all you have to do is plug it in, and the steering wheel control interface where all you have to do is plug it in. So we're going to connect this first. All you do is plug this into here, and then this connection plugs into the back of your radio. Right here is SWC. Then we have our power connection, which is going to hook up here. Then we have our speaker connection, which hooks up here. And lastly, we have this connection for the remote and the cameras, which is going to hook up there. So now our antenna, we don't need an adapter. It's just going to hook up right here from the vehicle, and we can go and plug this in. If you're going to be installing a microphone with your radio, my recommended place for a microphone installation is right in this corner. So that's where I recommend installing your mic. For our installation, we don't need it, but I wanted to mention it for those that are running a mic. Mounted right here, run the wire underneath the actual headliner. Unclip this. It's just pressure. You're just going to stick a pry tool, pull it out. It has clips, and then run your wire down, around, and to the radio. Alright guys, so all you really need to plug in the car is this blue connector, which is this right here. So this is going to plug right in, and then the other thing we have to plug in is our antenna. So if you are doing a different radio, you're going to have to plug in your microphone, GPS antenna, all your other connections. So you want to verify you have those. And if you're going to keep your factory subwoofer, then the connection that you need to make, or the wire tap you need to make, is up there. Alright guys, so the 2 wires that you want to wire tap to get your subwoofer working are that blue, or this blue, this is the positive, and this pink, which is the negative. So here, I'll show you the location. So that's on the bottom row, that's on the top row, and this again is positive. This is what you want to strip wrap the RCA around, and this is negative on the RCA. So if you were using what we're using, this green would go to blue. You would strip it, wrap it, solder it, and then the black, that black would go to that peach, and you would strip it, solder it. If you want to avoid having to solder and strip those wires, then you can use our connector. It's just going to plug right into this, and it'll give you that sub RCA already, so you don't have to do any wire stripping or tapping. And this goes to the subwoofer out, which on this radio is this green port. So those are all the connections you'll have to plug in, unless you have other accessories such as your GPS antenna, microphone, etc. Now we can mount our radio in place. Since we disconnected the battery, I'm going to connect the battery, power this on, test it. We'll disconnect the battery again and put everything back together. We plugged our battery back in. We put our radio sort of mounted for now. And this is so we can test everything and program our steering wheel controls. So for our steering wheel controls, should get auto picked up. We shouldn't have to press anything on the steering wheel. They should just be automatically recognized. So the ASWC1 is going through its flashes. So you can see it already identified the vehicle. So now it's going through its programming. Now it's going to switch to red, recognize our radio. It'll go solid red once it has recognized the radio. And now we should be good. We should be able to use our steering wheel controls to turn the volume up and down. And as you can see, the volume is going up and down. So now we're going to test our radio antenna. As you can see, we have sound, which is great. And now we're going to test our subwoofer. Alright guys, so we're having a small issue where our antenna on the factory radio is on this side, on this radio is on the other side, and it's causing us some trouble when we're trying to set the radio. So if you're having the same issue we're having, you can pick up this extension. It's a universal extension made from Metra, and basically the way you use it is you take the original antenna, plug it in there, and then you get an extension to plug into your radio. So that gives us plenty of slack. We have plenty of room now so that we can sit our radio back. This is going to require some force because the screws we use are touching against this, but it's nothing that you can't overcome. You just don't want to push from the radio screen. You don't want to crack it. You want to push on the sides like I am. Alright guys, so you want to lean the top first and then the bottom. As you can see, these two will hook up on the sides. If you really want it to be anti-deterrent for theft, if you think someone's going to go into your car and possibly try to steal your radio, you could actually use screws through the dash kit onto the radio from this bezel, but in our case we're not going to do that. This is more than secure enough for our use case. If someone's going to tear this car apart this far to get the radio, they can have it. Now that our radio is set in, we're going to put down our two screws that go here. Then we're going to put the centerpiece back, screw that down. Then we're going to put the sides back. Then this is going to slide forward again. And then our cover is going to go back on. The only tricky part of putting the vehicle back together is the dog getting in the way. No, it is this centerpiece has to sit flush against this. And you'll think to push this down, but really you want to pull it up so that it sits correctly, and I'll show you that in a second. Alright guys, so we're going to plug this back in. That's going to click into place, and then we're going to swing it around, and here's the part I'm telling you that is a little bit tricky. So you're going to want to line this up. You want to make sure you get your connectors for your heated seats. But you're going to want to line this up, and you're going to see there's a little bit of a gap here, and the way you overcome that gap is by bringing the radio forward like so, not pushing this further back down. So bring this forward to this, and now you can screw it in and the gaps are gone. Now for the rest of the assembly, you're going to go with your two screws here. You're going to put your switches back down. We'll cover the rest, but from here is smooth sailing. Before you put anything back, make sure to thoroughly test your radio. So if you have a backup camera, make sure to thoroughly test that. If you have GPS, you might want to pull your car outside. If you're not doing this outside, make sure that's working. Make sure your microphone's working. Make sure CarPlay, Android Auto, or any function you're looking for is working. before you put everything back. Now that we have these 4 screws securing the radio, we're now going to put the screws securing this panel. And to do that, there are 2 screws at the bottom you took out. I'll show them to you with the light. So you can see they're kind of lined up. It looks like this left one isn't as lined up as the right one, but you're gonna wanna put these in with some kind of magnet or magnetic screwdriver. And the reason I say that is because when you go to put these in, it's very tough to not have them fall if you don't have either a magnetic screwdriver or a pickup tool to get them started. Now you don't want to tighten them all the way down until you have both in, because if you tighten one down, you might tighten it down on an area where it's not allowing you to put the other one. So you want to start both. After you have started both, you can then tighten them. Now that we got those 2 bottom screws in, we're gonna now attach our heat controls for our seats back. So the way you're gonna do this is you're gonna put this piece in first. You're then gonna slide the connectors through here and then hook them up. So I'll show you exactly what that looks like. So this is the left one, and the blue one's for the right. So get the piece into place like I did, slide them through, make sure you do. So once they're both through the holes, you can just firmly put that piece back down. As you can see, it's in it's sitting correctly. And now we're going to put our switches. Their switches are going to go like this, so if you misplace them, they also have the lettering for right and left. So we're going to plug in. So we're going to plug in the switch, and then you're just going to push it down, and it will seat itself when you push it. And the same thing on the other side. You're just going to hook it up, push the wiring down, push the switch down, and now it's in its place. This is the last piece. You're just going to throw it back over the OBD2 connector so that all this is back together. Now that we have this secured, our switch is back, we're going to put these back. This tabs right here line up with this. So before we put in any screws, we just want to make sure this is going to sit flush. We're going to do the other side, and then we'll start screwing things down. So to put this back, you're going to slide it into the slot that I slid it into. So you want to get it here first, and then you can push it into the side like so, and you'll know you're in the right place because your tab, your clip here will line up and your screw points will line up. So now that that's lined up, I'm going to do the other side. Alright guys, so this screw point is very important. So we're going to slide this back into place, and then we're going to screw this down. So the way this goes is you're going to pull this back again, you're going to slide it behind it, get it into place, and again, the way you know you're in the right spot, this clip's going to line up and these screw points are going to line up. So you can see it's a little lower than it needs to be, so I'm bringing it up, and now I'm in the right spot, and now I'm going to put my screws back. So I'm going to start by putting that screw that's behind this panel back, then the side screws, and then I'll continue from there. Alright guys, so I'm just putting my side screws back in. Remember, I didn't have all my screws, you will, so a screw's going to go here, a screw's going to go up here, and then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Alright guys, now that we have our side pieces back in, we're just going to put this back to where it goes. Actually, before we do that, I'm just going to put my shifter back to its correct location. So I'm hitting the switch, I put it back in park, then I'm going to put this back on. This just snaps into place. And now what I want to do is, remember, we haven't put any screws back in, just the ones for the sides, but none here. Now we're going to shift this back into place, and these vents need to go inside the panel, and these tabs need to go into the panel. So that's what's going to line everything up. So you want to be careful to make sure to get the vents in and these tabs. If they're sticking out, it's not going to match up correctly. And then lastly, these right here need to insert into this piece. So you want to try to line all that up. It can be tricky, but if you have patience, you should be able to get it done. I got both my tabs in on the sides, and then I also got the inserts here. As you can see, like whoever's putting this radio apart, try to pry this off, you can see there are like imprints on the plastic. So now we're going to put our screws back. The screws that we're going to put back are these two here. these two here, and then the two that are inside of the center console. Put those two screws back, these two screws back. I don't have these screws, but you do, so make sure you put them back. And we have some screws left over, but this is from the factory radio stuff that we're not going to be putting back or using. Now what we need to do is put back this trim panel and put back this trim panel, and our installation will be complete. To put these back, they do have tabs that you want to line up. You can see this one was probably bent, so it was forced in. You don't want to do that to yours. So you're just going to line it up in the middle. I'm sorry, you're going to line it up at the top, and that's going to push in first, and then the rest of yours should kind of just fall into place for you to put into their slot. So again, on the other side, you're going to do the same. You're going to line up the top first. That'll sit in flush, and then you'll just press down on all the other ones. Alright guys, so this Bose radio. So the Bose radio comes with a little remote. You just got to peel the cover for the battery, and now we can listen and play with our radio.
Spilled your milkshake? Quick, the quicker picker upper. Bounty picks up spills quicker.
So that sounds really good. It's really loud. Here's our USB port, like I was saying, and our aux cable. And then no CD player on this radio, but you do get an SD card and a nice volume knob, of course. And this way, our volume up and down still work. We didn't do a backup camera or anything else, so that's really all there is to show you on this radio. It's very simple. You can do a backup camera. You obviously have Bluetooth, like I mentioned before, USB, and then you do have A-Link, which is a mirroring technology for Android phones. So if you want to mirror your Android phone on the screen, you would just install A-Link on your phone, and you'd be able to mirror only your Android phone to the screen. Alright guys, that's going to wrap up this video. As you can see, we thoroughly covered the installation of this radio, and it looks really great. Let me show it to you. See, no seams, real nice and clean. The illumination you can set to the color of the car, so you can get that white or orange, whatever you like. And then everything is set up and working. All of our speakers work. We kept our factory sub. We have no hiss, no noise. If for some reason your installation resulted in noise, you're going to want to go through the noise troubleshooting steps. Number 1 is check your battery terminals. Number 2 is check your grounds. And then number 3 would be to check your radio. Your radio could have bad outputs. There is no amplifier for the door speakers, so if you're getting hissing, it's coming from the radio. If you want to keep your subwoofer, make sure to check our store for the accessories. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us via email or phone. If you want this installation done on your vehicle, feel free to reach out to us for an appointment. We're located in Bayshore, New York. We're probably an hour away from New York City, so if you're ever in the area, feel free to come stop by and pet the dog or come meet one of us. But that's it guys, that's going to wrap up the video, so I really appreciate you watching. Remember, the DIY Pro Series covers installations in depth. We have more videos coming. The next video is going to be on replacing our speakers, and then we're going to go to the subwoofer. We have a couple other things planned. We might do a backup camera video, so make sure you stay subscribed, make sure you join the channel, and please share the video, like the video. Thanks for watching.